All right, let's take a look at this resume parser that mostly built on Saturday. So here in the code.js file, this is really where you will need to spend the majority of your time unless you're wanting to go in and look at all this code and how it works. And if you wish to do that, you can catch most of it, probably 70% of it, on the 6-hour stream that I did on Saturday. But I'm not going to go through all of it right now. Let's look at the important parts. So how does this work? If you input a target folder ID, which is this, it will extract all of the resumes that you have in that folder and parse the contact information out of them. So let's give it a look. First things first, you need to create a folder that has your resumes in it and grab the ID, which is the part just after the folder. Well, here, I'll just pull through the whole link here so you can see. So if you look in the URL, you'll see this, and you just want this piece here, and then just paste it up here, right? Cool. So one other thing you need to do, you need to, well, this isn't apparent, or it doesn't matter for this purpose when we're pulling out of a folder. We'll look at that when we're pulling from email. The next thing we need to look at is the sheet information. So you need to name your sheet that you want, as well as the sheet, the spreadsheet, as well as the sheet name. So the sheet within the spreadsheet that you're targeting. If it's a new spreadsheet, this will go ahead and create it for you. So we'll call this July parsed resumes. And since I don't currently have a spreadsheet named that, it will hopefully create one for us. And add to versus new, or add to versus not add to. This is basically if you are creating a spreadsheet for this one instance and you wouldn't want to add any new information, then you could just put this as false and it would actually overwrite. If this sheet existed, it would overwrite that information. So we're going to use add to in this test. And then here, target object key. This is what we dedupe against. So if you want to dedupe against email, put email. If you want some other things, you can put some other things. And this is relevant to email extraction, but let's go ahead and run it. So this is an resume folder parser. So we're going to run that script. We select it, press run, and it'll take a minute. About a minute maybe, depends on how many resumes you have. It's roughly 5 to 10 seconds per resume that it's parsing, maybe less. It just kind of depends on the resume and what it's doing. So with that in mind, you're really not going to be able to run this on more than roughly 100 resumes at a time, because Google Apps will time out after 30 minutes. There we go. So it was less than a minute. Now let's look and see. We should have, hopefully, cool. We created a new spreadsheet, and within that spreadsheet, we have the information that we extracted. And this is just made up information, by the way. It's not real, so no worries. We're not showing anyone's real information. But we get the email address, the full name, the phone number, LinkedIn address if it found one, and then here is a link to the file. This is like, for whatever reason it doesn't extract the phone numbers or whatever properly, you can go in here and pretty easily see it. The file ID, the date the file was created, the file name, file type. All right, now let's look at email. And let me make sure this is marked as unread, so it will read. Well, let's look at the email manager. So it will read, at least right now, it's reading the first 50 threads in your inbox. And it will look for a subject containing resume. If the subject contains resume, it will look for resumes within it, and if it has attachments that are resume type, it will extract them, convert them, process them, and toss them into the spreadsheet. So if you wanted to use other subjects, you could do that here and change this to whatever it is that you want. If you just wanted it to be anything in the subject for it to look at all incoming, you could just put a dot and that would achieve the same thing. All right, and there's some other parameters too that I don't have turned on, but you could also restrict domain. So let's look at it first and then we'll look at the details. So process resumes from email. Click run. This will take a few seconds. This actually takes a little bit longer than the folder option because, oh no, let's see if it actually ran. No. One of the downsides of Google Apps Script is because it's free, it doesn't get priority. There it is. So it came through. Cool. Now this gives us a little more information because it came through an email, and also it gives us the file that we created from the attachment. But it also gives us the email date, the email ID, and who sent it to us. So one thing you might do if you're just running this on emails, you might want to dedupe on sender instead of email, because if people are sending multiples of the same resume, you may want to know that. And by deduping, basically, it looks to see if the email address here already exists, and if it does, it doesn't add a new record. It just ignores it, moves on. Cool, so that's it. Let's run it again, make sure our deduper is actually working. And it is. Yeah, I'm pretty happy with this. I was really having some issues yesterday with this piece, and my workaround is really ugly, but it does work. Because it's difficult to know what is necessarily going to be someone's name in a resume. If they're, sometimes people are good and they put their name in the file name, but not necessarily, right? And then how do we recognize it? A lot of times it will be at the top of the resume, but not necessarily. So one of the methods that I use, there's a couple methods. So the first is it does look for something at the start of the resume, and if it's likely to be a name, it thinks that it assumes that's the name. It also checks to see if the file name, it splits up the file, and if any of the words in the file match any of the email address before @ it assumes then that the file name is the person's name, and it splits off anything that wouldn't be a name and then puts that as the name. And then the final thing that I did, which was the thing that was really giving me trouble, is here in document management in this file. So basically what we do is we go into the document that we've created in Google Apps, as we're converting files here, right, into file type that we can manipulate in Google Apps Script. And we're looking at the character or the font sizes within the resume. And we can assume, I think most of the time, that the largest font is going to be the person's name, especially if there are, a lot of different font sizes. And so that's what this stuff's checking on. It's checking to see, all right, how many font sizes exist? If they meet some threshold that I think made sense, then this is probably the name, and then pull it back. Unfortunately, the font for the way that you can look up a font in Google Apps Script is based on a paragraph, which is basically a line. And if the start of that line is a smaller font than the end of it, which is the case in some PDF conversions, then you're screwed. And so I had to write another thing to split the text, and it basically looked for every white space and split on every white space for the first 120 or so spaces. And then chopped those up, did some other stuff to figure out where it belonged, and yeah, this is what all this is doing. And so basically this entire thing is just to figure out what the name is. Here, Sheets Manager, we're not using everything in this, but it's all in here because I use this for some other scripts. And one of the new scripts I created, or it's not a new script, but it's an improved script, is Json to table. So this is necessary mostly just because of how I like to process information. It's in JSON format, as well as a lot of the time, we're going to be receiving information from the web in JSON format. And so this transforms a relatively flat JSON into a table for us, and pretty effectively. Yeah. So this is how I merge the tables and figure out how to dedupe and all that stuff. It makes the process a lot faster than some older methods that I was using. So in the past, I would just insert every line and check on that line, but that wasn't a very efficient method for these purposes. So yeah. All right, well, that's covering it. I just wanted to kind of give a rundown of how this worked. I'm going to make a copy of this, and then I will I'll share the code. Actually, I'm just going to probably share the code on GitHub. So, one other really important piece, really very important. You need to, if you're setting this up, and I covered this in the stream on Saturday, but if you're setting this up, you need to go to Resources, Advanced Cloud Services, and you need to make sure that Drive API is on. Now, if you've never turned on any APIs before on your Google account, when you click on this, it's going to put some prompt window up saying that you need to accept terms of service and all this stuff. And so you'll have to go over there and do that. And you have to create an account, and you might even have to set up billing, but don't worry, you're not going to use, it's not going to cost anything to do this because you're not going to use or exceed the limit. And in any case, they give you $300 when you first create it anyway. At least if it's on a business account, which mine is. Anyway, so yeah, just remember that you need to go to Resources and then Advanced Cloud Services, and you need to turn on the Drive API. If this is not on, this will not work because this utilizes the Drive API. And I think that's everything. So, all right, we're going to be done. Take it easy.